All right, everybody. Thanks for coming to watch another video here. We're going to talk about some hoof stuff again. This particular video has to do with Char. Who's just hanging out right now. I gave her a big trim today and a really big cleanup, and it reminded me of the amount of things that there are to talk about in regards to hooves and keeping them healthy, or getting them healthy and keeping them healthy. And the only real way to talk about this is sort of break it up into pieces, and because there's so much to do. And now if you haven't seen a recent video, I've done a couple recent ones, but the most recent one is the one where I worked with Gracie's feet and I explained the basic parts of the hoof. I'll do so again here really quickly, so if you're familiar with it, you can obviously fast forward. If you need a review, you can just watch, and if you haven't heard it before, it's a good thing to sort of know. We're going to talk about the main thing I want to talk about for her is frogs. So I got my pen, and you guys should be able to see that pretty clearly when I start to write on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw a basic hoof from the bottom. So what I'll do is I'll just draw a circle there. Make that thicker, and there. Now I wouldn't say I'm the best drawer in the world, but this here is a basic hoof from the bottom, okay? And this little bit in here is what we want to talk about, and I will circle that in purple right here. So the bottom of the hoof, if you've never looked at a hoof before, if you're not a horse person, you don't happen to have your own horse to look at, you probably never cleaned a horse's foot, but when you look at the bottom of a hoof, your primary point of cleaning is going to be in this part here. Okay, so here is the outside wall. It comes down to the heel and to the bars. In between the bars and the frog is where people do a lot of their cleaning, because they step in stuff, it's kind of deep, and it gets stuck in there. And that's what sort of necessitates the need to clean them up. So very basic. Again, we've got the hoof wall, the bars. All of this material in here is called the sole, and then this part in here is the frog. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I really only need my whiteboard for this part to explain the pieces of the hoof, and I'm sort of questioning whether or not it's any good, but the bottom line is we need to talk about frogs. The frog portion of the hoof is I mean, as all parts of the hoof go, it's integral to the health of the whole hoof itself. So a real quick backstory on Char. She came here a little over a month ago now. She came here shod. She's been shod, I think, quite a while, and her owner has asked her to be able to go barefoot. And when I removed her shoes, I found a number of things that we might be able to talk about later that were wrong, that haven't been corrected in a while. So working on those, which is one of the reasons why she's here, is so we can get her feet really healthy. But one of the things really stands out, and that's one of her feet, one of her rear feet, her back left foot, has what is widely known as sort of a very thrushy frog. And if you've never heard of thrush, I'll put a link below to a description my site of what thrush is, and you can go search around and see what other people say too. But it's essentially where the frog has just been infiltrated by bacteria, and that continues to sort of grow out and destroy it. The frog is just this mushy sort of, like an eraser, like an eraser for a pencil sort of material, and it's a callus. It turns into a thick callus on the outside. But if it's compromised for its health, then it can lead to so many other things. So I would say the frog is almost number one to take care of, because a bad frog can lead to the rest of the hoof falling apart. Now here's the reason why. If you take, say, the heel of your foot, just the basic heel of your foot, and you're stepping around, you're walking around, if your heel hurts, you're going to try to not step on it. If any of you have ever had foot issues, you've had plantar fasciitis, Newman's Morton's or something like that. There's another one that's on the ball of your foot. Achilles heel, you know, there's all kinds of foot issues out there. But if you've ever had a foot issue, you know that you step improperly for it. You try to accommodate for the pain, and you start limping, or you start stepping on a different part of your foot more, and that will affect you all the way up your body. It'll affect your ankles, it'll affect your knees, it'll affect your hips, and it'll affect your back. So when our horses are out and about and they're doing things and they're not, you know, whether it's through just forgetting or actual true negligence and not taking care of the horse at all, and improper care, maybe even though you trusted somebody, they didn't provide the care that the horse actually required, which is very common, then they get sore, and then they start to get more sore, and then they're really sore, but they hide it, because horses are herd animals, and the weakest of the bunch will get left behind. It's just the way it works. So they've got to hide it. They've got to show no pain as best as they can, but there's lots of ways for us to figure out that they are in pain. The easiest way to figure out that the frog is troubled is by looking at it. So here's where I'm going to show you a couple of pictures. And the first picture is going to be when she originally came and what her foot sort of looked like from the bottom. And now the next picture is actually very recent. I'm just going to, you know, go ahead in a month. So I trimmed that up, cleaned it up as best I could, cleaned it and treated it to help get rid of that stuff that's in there. You got to clean it out. And so we'll fast forward to today, actually, and I trimmed it again, or started to trim it, just cleaned it out, and I took this picture. Okay, so for my own reference, so we're both looking at the same things because I took it on my phone. I will describe to you what I see from my own perspective here, and I'll point it out in the picture that I'm going to show on the screen with little red dots or whatever I choose to do. So, okay, so the first thing that you see when you look at this foot is that it looks like the frog itself is separating off of the foot. So you can see on the right hand side in the image there's a big crack and a big gap, and it looks pretty ominous. You know, it looks like that's a big deal. And it is. It is actually a big deal. The frog, the bottom of the foot, should never look like this. And then in the middle of the foot is essentially just a big gap of crud and garbage and whatnot. Now this frog has already been trimmed once by me, and I essentially took off the outer layer that was on there, because it was just, if you look a little further along, and I'll circle it here, there's this outer layer on top of that underlayer that covers up the underlayer. And underneath that was this frog. So I cleaned it up as best I could and treated it, but there's something to think about if you ever decide to get into trimming feet, or if you want to sort of help your own horse out. The thing to consider here is that sometimes you can only trim so far on a frog before you just make them straight out sore, just wrecked. Because the frog is a big callus, essentially, when it wears, when it grows down. It grows down from the inside of the hoof, and it's very thick. It's usually at least an inch and a half or so. A good thick frog should be there, maybe 2 inches, you know, depending on the size of the foot. And it should be solid, and it shouldn't smell, and there should be no gaps, no cracks, no flakiness or anything. The hoof that you're looking at is not, the frog you're looking at is not solid. And it's got 2 different layers. So the outer layer is a really old layer that's been sitting there and hasn't come off because it is actually so calloused. It's calloused enough to not wear. And the point here is that she probably didn't step on it enough to wear it enough. So this is where we step in when we go to trim. We have to help that out. So the extra flaps and the stuff that's not supposed to be there, you cut off. But being careful with the stuff underneath, because it's too young, it's too fresh, I guess you could say, to where if they were to step on it, the transfer of pressure would travel through too much. That's why it calluses up, so that it can dissipate the pressure of stepping on, say, a rock or a twig or a log or anything more evenly across the frog. An ouchy frog can cause so many problems. So what we do is we kind of clean that off. So I'll show you another picture of the post trim. And you can see in this picture that the stuff that was on there and looked like it was cracked and coming off was actually something that was ready to come off. And the reason we know it's ready to come off, and I didn't trim it off last time because it wasn't quite ready to come off, but this time it was, because most of it is not connected anymore. When most of it is not connected and the underside is feeling a little firmer, because when I first took that layer off, it was too soft. The underside of the frog was too soft. So then you give it a couple of weeks or so, and it'll start to callus over and get harder and harden up. But there's still a lot of junk left on there that I couldn't trim off right away, because the frog is always kind of growing down. Now, from here, I trimmed off all the excess crap and then a little bit more, and got to where it was cleaned out and it could now be sort of aired out. And that's going to be the healing method for this frog. And I would say probably in another month, she'll grow out most of the stuff that's sitting in there, as long as I keep it clean, and I'll very lightly trim it over the next couple of weeks or so. Every week I'd probably go in there and I'd clean it right out, treat it all, and continue to kill off the outside stuff that's trying to dig its way inside. Continue to keep it aired out, continue to keep it clean. And in such a case, she should recover, her frog should recover just nicely from that. And the part down more near the middle of the hoof will actually come off as well, a little bit more, because it's not quite done yet. So it should recover pretty well. But I wanted to discuss that a little bit. I wanted to talk about frogs a little bit, but give you some context as to what I could possibly be talking about through pictures and a description of how something is started and something how it's being treated. And hopefully I'll be able to follow up with you guys later with how it turns out. I expect it to turn out quite well. So with it getting healed up, with it being trimmed down carefully, not too quickly, not too slowly, and kept clean, she should recover really well and be able to walk out on all types of material without any trouble. So that is the the long version, I guess. It's not really, frogs in a nutshell. That's a really long talk, and I know I covered a lot of things. So hopefully that's sort of interesting. I'm sure that I will put together a more comprehensive video discussing all portions of the foot. I want to keep talking about this. I think it's really important to get out there to make sure that if you have a horse, inspect its feet. Do the frogs smell? Are they mushy? Is there an extra layer that's sitting under the underlayer or sitting over top of the underlayer that is then holding in material, which is what she had. You can see in the pictures, it's just holding in stuff. If a frog is flaky, that means it's sort of rotting and that extra stuff should come off. And so there's lots of easy things to look for. But when they get into the harder cases of how much should you take off, how much should you dig in there, you really have to be careful that you don't take off the underside of the calloused stuff that is just too soft, too fresh. Otherwise you'll just lame them more and it'll make everybody sad. So anyways, that's that. And so Char's coming along quite nicely for that. She's getting in the trailer as I showed you guys earlier. And her feet are just, yeah, I'm really, really impressed. It's nice. So anyways, I will leave it at that. It's getting near the end of the day. Had lots going on. Look at the arena. I'm going to start talking about things to do when riding, how to improve. You know, whoa, camera fell. Things to improve, you know, when you go to do your turns and your stops and your goes and making your riding more accurate for primarily safety purposes in the end. Just see the sky. I'm just walking ahead here. We've got, we had rain and it was, yeah, not very good weather this morning. It started to clear and started to clear and started to clear. And now we just got these last little bits of cloud sort of sitting out there. And it's beautiful. You know, sunset just, those clouds are going to be gone for tomorrow. And it's going to be sunny. So, okay, let's leave it at that. Thanks for watching, everybody. I know it's been kind of long, probably a little convoluted. I will organize myself a bit better. I have some ideas. But for now, that's it. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you guys again real soon.